Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vicky Deschênes. I'm going to be your MC for today. Thank you for joining us to this daily news conference about the organization EMO, Emergency Measures Organization, and the flood situation in New Brunswick. So the first at the microphone today is Greg McCullum, Director at EMO. So Greg, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for being here again today for this, the update on Tuesday, May the 8th. As you're all aware, and I'm sure the public is noticing, the river level from Fredericton to St. John is gradually going down and is down certainly from yesterday. The forecast is calling for this trend to continue over the next few days. Good news. But the threat's not over, and it's not time to let anyone's guard down. So we want residents to remain vigilant because the water's still high. We're still certainly well in a meter beyond flood stage, and will be for the next few days. We know that evacuees' patience is being tested now, but we're still asking them not to lose patience, and certainly not to return home before it's safe to do so, and they're told so by a competent authority. The current is still strong in the river, and the water's still cold, and it's still full of debris, and it's very dirty. So with heavy contamination in there, sewage and all the things we've described over the last few days, that does pose a health risk. And while we're still advising people to stay off the river, some will feel the urge, or in fact, in some cases, the necessity to get back on the river. And we want to make sure, however, that if people are doing so out of necessity, that they're doing it safely, they're using the proper safety equipment, and I suppose you could call it obeying the traffic rules, because we still have boats out there doing operational tasks. Lots of people are starting to use the recovery word, which is, of course, the next phase of this. And yes, the river is down slightly. But at St. John and Jemseg, I just want to remind people, they are still well above flood stages in those locations. So rest assured, lots of discussions are going on, lots of preparations and planning are being done for the next recovery phase of this operation. But it's still an emergency situation in some areas. And we are still encountering circumstances where we need to evacuate people who have come essentially to the point where they need assistance. There are still lots of road barricades and other control measures that are necessarily in place and need to be observed and obeyed. Recovery is often characterized by impatience and frustration. And you've heard the word historic used many times about this flooding event. And that really speaks to the magnitude of the impacts, but it also speaks to the complexity of recovering from it. So people, I'm sure, intuitively would understand, but they need to remember that recovery, in every instance, is going to require a very deliberate, thoroughly planned, and coordinated approach. And to the individual homeowner, as impatient as they may be, they need to understand that these measures are in place to ensure when they do return home and assess their circumstances, that it's done in a safe manner and it is declared safe for them to do so. So we do continue to urge people's patience so that we don't have any unfortunate incidents of people trying to get back. And I get the anxiety, I understand completely, but trying to get back and taking unnecessary risks that might put themselves in danger. One final note before I hand over to some of the other speakers is that I want to remind people that Alert Ready, our public alerting system, it's a national system, will be tested tomorrow evening, Wednesday, May 9th at 6:55 p.m. You would have heard in all likelihood that this system, which you may be used to seeing warnings and alerts on television periodically or on the radio as testings of a system, this system that will be tested tomorrow will now include wireless public alerting for all compliant wireless devices. And this test was programmed a number of months ago, and it's a deliberate test. It'll be clearly indicated as such. And we don't want to alarm anybody. There's no requirement for people to do anything, but understand that this test will be being conducted to confirm and validate the capability of that new system. The test is coordinated nationally, and other provinces will be doing the same thing at the same time. So there may be some chatter or interest in this. But it's just coincident that it's happening during a time when we're dealing with a disastrous situation, and it's otherwise not related. So without further ado, I'll now pass on to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Our next speaker is Dr. Jennifer Russell, Chief Medical Officer of Health. Donc, notre prochaine porte-parole est la Dr. Jennifer Russell, qui est médecin hygiéniste en chef pour la province.
Merci, Vicky. Thank you. Bonjour, bon après-midi, good afternoon. I'm here this afternoon to talk about the importance of staying away from floodwaters and the importance of what you should do if you do come into contact with it. So you need to avoid contact with floodwaters if you can, as the waters may contain sewage from overflowing sewage systems and agricultural and industrial waste. Water contaminated with sewage may carry bacteria, which can make people sick. These bacteria, such as Salmonella and E. coli, are typically spread through fecal-oral route, meaning that the greatest risk of infection comes from eating contaminated food or drinking contaminated water, and the contamination can even come after you've touched it, and so it's on your hands, and so that's why it's really important for proper hygiene to be washing your hands. Keep pets out of the flooded area to prevent from tracking sewage to the other areas. Assurez-vous de tenir les animaux de compagnie hors de la zone inondée pour les empêcher de traîner les eaux d'égout dans d'autres endroits. Never touch raw sewage with your bare hands. Wear gloves, rubber boots, eye protection, a face mask when cleaning and disinfecting. Always wash hands with soap and clean water after cleanup activities or after handling articles that were contaminated by sewage, even if you were wearing gloves. If soap and water are not available for hand washing, use a hand sanitizer. Don't allow children to play in floodwater areas until they have been cleaned up for about a week after the floodwater has cleared completely, after which the sunlight and soil will help destroy some of the harmful bacteria and any excess risk to health should disappear. Ne laissez pas les enfants jouer dans les zones où il y a des eaux d'inondation. Tant que ces secteurs n'auront pas bien été nettoyés, ou attendez environ une semaine après que les eaux de crue se soient complètement retirées. Après cela, le sol et les rayons du soleil vont contribuer à détruire des bactéries nocives et tout risque accru à la santé devrait disparaître. Wash children's hands frequently, always before meals. Wash floodwater contaminated toys with hot water or disinfect before allowing them to be used. Lavez souvent les mains des enfants, toujours avant les repas. Nettoyez bien les jouets souillés par des eaux d'inondation en utilisant de l'eau chaude ou désinfectez-les avant de permettre aux enfants de les réutiliser. If you have any open cuts or sores that are exposed to floodwater, keep them as clean as possible by washing them with soap and water and applying an antibiotic ointment to discourage infection. Wash clothes contaminated with flood or sewage water in hot water and detergent separately from uncontaminated clothes and linens. Seek medical attention if you are exposed to sewage water and you develop diarrhea, vomiting, or fever. Si vous avez été en contact avec des eaux d'égout et que vous commencez à avoir la diarrhée, des vomissements ou la fièvre, il faut obtenir des soins médicaux. Remember, floodwaters may cause community sewage systems to become overwhelmed, and this can lead to sewage backing up into homes and businesses. The floodwater itself can be heavily contaminated with sewage and pose health risks such as sickness and infection. If residents find sewage that has backed up into their home, they should wear rubber boots, waterproof gloves if in contact with water and during cleanup. Thank you. Merci.
Merci, Dr. Russell.
Merci, Vicky.
Our next spokesperson is Jasmine Boisvert from the Department of Environment. He is a water resources specialist with the Hydrology Center.
Thank you. Today, we'll provide a brief update on our 5-day forecast. Merci. Aujourd'hui, je vous fournirai une mise à jour des prévisions pour les 5 prochains jours. In terms of weather, there is no significant precipitation in the weather forecast over the next few days. Au nord de la province, aucune communauté se trouve au-dessus du niveau d'inondation. Les prévisions indiquent que les niveaux d'eau vont continuer à baisser lentement au cours des prochains jours. In the south, water levels in the lower St. John River Basin, from Fredericton all the way down to Quispamsis St. John, have all declined slightly. They will continue to slowly decline, and I emphasize the word slowly. They will continue to slowly decline, barring a very large rain event. Depuis hier, les niveaux d'eau dans les bassins inférieurs du fleuve Saint-Jean, de Fredericton jusqu'à Quispamsis Saint-Jean, ont diminué tranquillement. Ils devraient continuer à diminuer, sauf si se passe un événement de pluie très important. While floodwaters are currently receding, it is a very slow process, and it will take time, so please be patient and plan accordingly. Residents are still advised to stay away from flooded areas and remain on high alert and take all precautions to stay safe. Please continue to monitor the Riverwatch website for the latest information. Même si les eaux de crue ont commencé à reculer, le processus est très lent et prendra du temps. Soyez patients et planifiez en conséquence. Les résidents devraient éviter les zones inondées, demeurer en état d'alerte et prendre toutes les mesures possibles pour assurer leur sécurité. Je vous encourage à consulter le site du programme de surveillance des cours d'eau pour les informations les plus récentes. Merci. Thank you.
Merci, Jasmin. Thank you, Jasmin. Now our next speaker is Jules Michaud from the Department of Transportation. So, Jules, s'il vous plaît.
Merci bien. Bonjour tout le monde. We currently have about 150 roads that are affected province-wide, including 85 which are either closed or partially closed. And we are currently closely monitoring another 65 roads. That number continues to fluctuate, so nb511.ca does remain your best source of information as far as road and lane closures are concerned. The Trans-Canada Highway does remain closed as well through from exit 306 in Oromocto to exit 423 in Riverglade. The detour route remains in place and will continue until further notice. However, water levels have been noted to begin receding. The province, along with our partner MRDC, will conduct detailed field reviews of the roadway as soon as water levels retreat enough to allow for proper access for review. Preliminary reports indicate that there is significant debris buildup along the highway that will require removal. The highway will reopen following any remedial work that is required to ensure that the highway is safe to accommodate road users. We anticipate that the highway will initially reopen to one lane in each direction as a result of the preliminary observations that we have on site. Route 10, west of the bridge in Chipman, remains closed to vehicle traffic, but water levels have begun to recede as well, and we are continuing to monitor the situation. Bronston Settlement Road is available for emergency vehicles, half-tons, and heavier vehicles. It's not a designated road, and there is a risk that it will deteriorate beyond its use if there's too much traffic on it. So please stay off of it unless it's absolutely necessary to go on it. CN continues to run an emergency shuttle bus in the region. We want to urge motorists and pedestrians that crossing bridges that have been closed to high water can be dangerous until they're properly inspected and deemed and reopened to the public. They have been closed to the public for safety reasons and also to maintain the integrity of the structure. Each assets, whether they're structures or roads, will need to be inspected to ensure that they're safe to resume operation. Critical components of these structures are often underwater, and as of now, we cannot assess their integrity until the water levels recede sufficiently. We are still very much in the response phase of this event. However, we are getting ready for recovery efforts. We are in the planning stages in order to be able to ensure that critical transportation links are being restored in a safe and timely manner. As always, we are very focused on public safety. I want to stress that it is important to be patient. People may think that because water has receded from the surface of a road that it's now safe to travel. There are many things that can happen that a road may not be safe in such instances, and we urge people to respect the signage that are posted. So if a road is posted, is closed, people should not be traveling on them. When we have done our inspections and the road is deemed to be safe to travel on, we will remove the signs. During the recovery process, when we get there, our first priority will be the restoration of transportation links to isolated communities. From there, we will prioritize based on factors such as the length of the detours, how long the asset has been closed, the volume of traffic that's been impacted, etc. Nous continuerons à communiquer les fermetures de route et les détours au public, et nous remercions les médias de nous aider à le faire. Nous demandons aux gens de consulter le site nb511.ca pour obtenir les toutes dernières informations sur les routes qui sont fermées. Conduisez prudemment dans les secteurs où l'eau peut recouvrir la chaussée. Prenez garde aux animaux sauvages et ne vous arrêtez pas pour prendre des photos. Nous remercions le public de sa patience et de sa collaboration pendant que nous faisons face à cette inondation sans précédent. Merci bien.
Merci, Jules. Thank you, Jules. We are now going on the phone with Mr. Mike Carr from the city of St. John at the Emergency Measures. Mike, are you on the line?
I am on the line. Thank you very much.
It's up to you.
So from St. John, thank you for inviting us to participate. We want to reaffirm that the safety of our residents and members of St. John EMO and all responding agencies is our number one priority. And we ask that our residents be patient as we transition into this recovery phase. St. John Water wanted to pass on that drinking water remains safe to consume. We have not had a disruption to drinking water for those in the St. John Water service. Those on the St. John Water drinking water system can continue to consume their tap water. Monitoring and testing has been enhanced and ongoing, and it is safe to consume. We are following the NBEMO guidelines that advise people on private wells that they may have been compromised to not use them before they're disinfected and tested. More details for testing are available through the Department of Environment and Local Government. We have closed 3 public parks. They are outside our isolation zone, but they are close to the flooding. We understand the appeal of children may have to play in these areas in the water and warm weather, but there are risks associated with doing so, including water depths, integrity of the structures, and potentially contaminated water. And we are asking the public to observe the posted signage and to not enter the parks at this time. Those parks are Robertson Square, Tucker Park, and Lower Shamrock Park. However, we extend water risk and hazard warnings to all residents in the St. John area. We have set up transportation for residents within the Randolph isolation area. The Canadian Coast Guard was ever so generous to supply us with a Zodiac to St. John EMO, and firefighters are using it to safely transport local residents in and out of the Randolph area. This service will run until 8 p.m. this evening. So the question is, what's next? So we're still in the situation with the highest floodwaters in recent times. It is expected to slowly recede, and we continue to urge people to use caution around the water. The St. John EMO, like other agencies, has begun planning for the initial recovery phases. There's a lot to consider and plan for, and more information will be provided to the public as the recovery plan unfolds. Critical components will include public safety, reinstating road access, other critical infrastructure and essential city services, and maintaining the operation of the city's water and sewage treatment facilities. As mentioned previously, priority will be to open up roads once the water level recedes to provide access to emergency vehicles and local area residents. But it is important to emphasize that roads will only be reopened once they have been inspected and are deemed safe. And just to reaffirm again, just because the water is off the road doesn't mean it's safe and it's open. Wellness checks, crews with St. John EMO, St. John Energy, and Cook Aquaculture continue to make wellness checks on those that have been isolated by water. And St. John Energy continues to work closely with us, providing disconnects and reconnects as the need arises. St. John Police Force is still in full force to patrol the areas and are stationed at some of the priority road closures. And we still have our emergency social services up and running. If people need a reception center, our Carleton Community Center remains open from 8 to 8. And outside, we still using the 1-800 Red Cross number. We have the same number of residents at this time. Same number of roads are closed, but more importantly, to get the most accurate information, please go to www.stjohn.ca for the most current information on flooding in St. John, and that's all there is to report at this time. Thank you from St. John.
Thank you, Mike. We are now going to take questions from the reporters. On va maintenant prendre des questions. J'aimerais que vous adressiez, que vous m'indiquiez à qui vous voulez poser votre question. Please let me know who you would like to ask your question. So we're going to start with Pierre-Alexandre, Radio-Canada.
Dr. Russell?
Oh, just before we go, I forgot. We have NB Power in the room, we have the City of Fredericton, and we have the Red Cross with us if you have questions. So Pierre-Alexandre, s'il vous plaît.
Parfait. Bonjour, Dr. Russell.
Bonjour.
Je serais pour avoir un petit peu plus de détails en français sur les réels risques de contamination avec les écoulements des coups. Vous l'avez dit en anglais, mais
Tous les détails que j'avais dit en anglais, tu voulais que je les répète en français?
c'est une réponse en général. Quels sont les risques de contamination pour la population avec ces eaux-là, ces refoulements des coups, des eaux contaminées?
OK. Alors, on fait on sait que l'eau est probablement toute contaminée. Alors, si c'est le cas, on ne veut pas que les gens touchent l'eau. S'il faut travailler avec, il faut vous protéger, les gants, les choses comme ça. Et après que vous avez touché l'eau, il faut vraiment s'assurer que vous êtes bien lavé les mains avec du savon. Parce qu'on sait que la bactérie qui est dans l'eau peut causer des infections gastro-intestinales. On sait aussi que ça peut causer des infections sur la surface du peau. Alors, ça veut dire que si vous avez des blessures déjà sur le peau, il faut les laver vraiment bien. Puis après ça, mettez de longs gants antibactériens dessus pour le protéger. Les messages au niveau des enfants, de ne pas les laisser jouer dans l'eau, c'est vraiment, vraiment dangereux. Et aussi parce qu'on ne veut pas qu'ils deviennent malades avec les maladies gastro-intestinales. Alors, il faut s'assurer qu'ils ne jouent pas dans l'eau. Il faut assurer que les animaux ne sont pas proches de l'eau non plus. S'il y avait des équipements ou des jouets qui sont contaminés, il faut vraiment éviter de jouer avec avant que ça soit tout lavé bien et décontaminé. Il faut vraiment, même les endroits où l'eau est déjà présente, il faut vraiment attendre que ça soit toute partie avant que vous pouvez vraiment jouer dans des endroits où il y avait d'inondations. Est-ce que ça va? Okay. Oui.
Have there been any reports of people becoming sick because of the flood?
I have not received any reports like that.
Questions? Merci, Dr.
Merci.
Questions?
Can I ask you about disaster forests? Is there an increase in outbreak?
I wouldn't say there's an increase in disaster tourism. I wouldn't say there's a decrease either. I mean, as the weather improves and people get out and about, curiosity is going to prevail. But there's been no uptick in incidents with regard to people necessarily being reported as doing risky things. However, road barricades are still there. People can come up with creative reasons why they should be able to get around them, but those are not being entertained. So people need to understand and obey barricades, safety precautions, safety measures in place. And if they wish to undertake photography or other forms of disaster tourism, do it from a safe location. I've heard, and this is probably not an accurate figure now, there's been some ticketing, a handful, 7, something like that. The people that have been ticketed for a host of things, whether it was, disobeying barricades or that sort of thing. But, this isn't widespread. People are being very cooperative. And my observations are that people are being very patient. And I really have to give a shout out to how people are being extremely good at essentially spontaneous volunteerism. We see that everywhere. And that's very heartening to see.
Yes, CTV.
I don't know who could answer this, but there is some concern out there as to who is eligible for disaster relief. I know that this is, of course, people kind of trying to plan and wanting to know and calling insurance companies. Is it across the board, or would you be able to even answer what the,
Disaster financial assistance is a program that's been in place for many years, and we've administered it many times. And it is designed, first of all, to provide, as the term implies, assistance. It is for uninsurable loss. It's for those catastrophic events that sometimes people have in life that they need assistance to recover from. If you can get insurance, just as in the case of your car or any other possession, you're expected to. But for those really catastrophic events, the Disaster Financial Assistance Program has been in place for a long time. Now, it is in place to help people restore their lives and their livelihood and to help communities do the same. And it has to be uniformly applied with that philosophy in mind. The Disaster Financial Assistance Program is always topical, obviously, during emergencies. And as I said, it is designed to help people when they need the help the most, when it's beyond their capacity to address losses, and when they couldn't have insured the type of losses they endured. Now, you will have probably a subsequent question, which is about recreational properties and this sort of thing. And I am in the emergency management business, not the macroeconomics. And I can assure you, though, that government is very sensitive to that. Government is discussing that. And government, when they have made decisions on the way forward in whatever assistance they can provide going forward, that that will be made public and will be well educated and explained to everybody.
I have a question. I'm not sure who's best to answer this one, but you mentioned that the water is going to recede very slowly. How slow are we talking? Are we talking like we won't? I know it's tough to predict these things, but should we, like in the next week or so, we should really see the back to normal?
I'm going to bounce that question to hydrology, but I'll just preface it by saying, if you look at yesterday relative to today, you've seen about a 2-foot drop locally here. And if you look at the 5-day forecast, which I know that Jasmine can explain in better detail than I, you'll see that that trend is now essentially, manifesting itself. I don't know if you want to provide more comment.
So I guess what we're looking at really is, as Director McCallum said, it dropped a few feet over the past few days here locally. I mean, other locations it was much slower, like downstream, it was only a few centimeters. So that's expected to, increase a little bit faster than that. But at the end of the day, it's still a very slow thing, and it also depends if it rains again, then that's going to slow down the decrease. If it rains a lot, then it might stabilize a little bit and then start to decrease again. It's all very far in the future. I mean, we're talking at least 5 days, so it's a matter of time, right? So it's hard to predict that kind of thing, but it's going to be a while.
Since you're already out there, could you tell us a little bit about the flow of water? How much was going through at the peak and compared to a normal level of water on the St. John River? Can you speak to that a bit?
What's your definition of normal level of water? Like summer flow or just...
Well, I guess, no, I was maybe contrasting, before this whole episode started, 12 days ago, let's say through Mactaquac compared to at its height, like was there
So in terms of flow at Mactaquac, during the event, the issue was that we had over 300,000 cubic feet per second coming through Mactaquac. And if I can refer back to 2008, we had about 380,000 coming through the dam. But that was only for 2 days, whereas in this case, we had over 300,000 cubic feet per second, but for a very long time, so several days, probably 7 or 8. And before the event, in the wintertime, we were looking at less than 80,000, maybe 50,000 cubic feet per second coming through Mactaquac. So it went from very, very little, just a normal winter flow or summer flow even, to 300,000 cubic feet per second in a matter of days. So.
And has it receded somewhat? Or
well, I have that information, I guess. I can quote actual numbers on that one, I guess. So as of this morning, coming through Mactaquac, we're at 200,000 cubic feet per second. And by the end of the week, we're expecting to be about 100,000 cubic feet per second.
And was this flooding caused mostly by the amount of snow up north, or what?
I wouldn't call it the amount of snow. The amount of snow was not abnormal for a winter. It was very much in the normal ranges. The issue was that we were at freezing temperatures for a very long time into April, and then it got very warm very fast, as in the teens. Positive degrees, and then didn't even freeze at night. It was still in the positives. So we had a very fast, very sudden snow melt, and that's what caused this, with a rain event on top of that snow melt. It just happened to coincide. And that's really what caused the event. And the fact that it wasn't a very slow warm-up means that we didn't get the chance to melt off a little bit of snow before we got there.
Anything else? Any question?
Mr. McCallum, could you bring us through the steps of what we call recovery? So what will need to happen when people will see there's no water around their house, but they might not be able to go back yet? For what reasons, and what are the steps of recovery?
Okay. The recovery phase, to begin with, starts with an assessment of the magnitude of the impacts. And that assessment can really only be informed by close examination and inspections. Habitually, in any of these disasters, when we start getting into the recovery phase, we dispatch what we call health and safety inspection teams. They're all formed up. They're already starting to work, in fact, up in Grand Falls, as the waters have receded in the northern parts of the province. So they make an initial determination of a number of things: the habitability of homes, the structural integrity of them, the safety of them. And from safety, I also mean public health safety, if they're if they're habitable. And then, and only then, in combination with assessing the routes to access communities by DTI, the integrity of bridges and roads, all those inspection activities are happening concurrently to create, as quickly as possible, a safe environment for people to return to their homes and start picking things up and cleaning things up. And another part of that recovery, of course, implies that there'll be assistance requirements for people to be able to do that. Municipal governments, Department of Environment and local government for unincorporated areas. There'll be a full court press of resources that'll have to be deployed and coordinated to create that safe environment to return to. And concurrently with that, as you can well imagine, service providers such as telephone and electric power, all those people have to do their piece of determining the integrity of the services and the systems in those homes. Now, there will be cases where people will go back and find significant damage, and those properties won't be immediately or potentially ever habitable again. And those are people that are certainly going to be provided with the service of disaster financial assistance programs, interim lodgings, support from the Red Cross, and others. Now, during the recovery phase, of course, everybody talks about cleanup. And I've mentioned some agencies that are going to be part of the cleanup, but there are other agencies that are going to be joining us, new voices at the table, such as Samaritan's Purse, which is an organization, a faith-based organization that has a large body of volunteers, a significant amount of support equipment and cleaning supplies, and people that come to the fore to assist in this process. And they've done this before. They did this in previous events, both here in the province and elsewhere. There's another organization called Team Rubicon. And Team Rubicon is a national organization predominantly of veterans of the forces, including, in fact, some American veterans. And this grouping, much like the same mission as Samaritan's Purse, are also coming to the fore, and they'll be in this province. I'm going to meet with their initial people tomorrow morning, and they will be part of this coordinated cleanup effort. Now, you've heard me say time and time again that people have to be patient. This is progressive. It has to be deliberately planned. And every individual who's been displaced will be assisted to whatever degree is necessary to get them as close as we can, as soon as we can, into those circumstances where they can recover with assistance as necessary.
The evacuation were voluntary. I'm sure you would want people to follow all the advice that you just said, but if they wanted to, they could go home at any time if they make a personal choice to go home.
Well, we're not in the business of coercing people. They have their rights. We're in the business of providing them the best information we can to make informed choices. We did that for those who were contemplating evacuating. We'll do the same thing for those contemplating to return. But we want to make sure, first of all, that things are safe and that they're given the advice on what is permissible and capable of being done. And, of course, they have to be able to get through roads that have to be inspected to get back to their homes.
Do you have an updated number? I know you gave us an idea yesterday. Are voluntary evacuations people registering that they've evacuated? Has that number increased?
That number has increased, and our representative from the Red Cross, Ali Murchison, can give you a precise number. Ali?
Thank you, Director. The total number of households that have registered with the Red Cross is 610, and that correlates to 1,417 individuals who've registered with the Red Cross. Of course, that is something that we've always encouraged people to do, and we continue to encourage people to register with us.
And that's not
Every day, about 100 people add to our total, so we're hoping that more people register with us as we push our message out.
Sorry, did you say 1,417?
Yes. Yep.
Are you operating shelters right now, or are all those people with family?
We do have about 230 people within our shelters, and that's both at UMB SJ as well as UMB Fredericton. Everybody else within those numbers have stayed with friends and family at this time. Thank you.
Anything else?
Yeah, Greg, you spoke about frustration and patience. Have you encountered that, or your teams? Do you have some real examples of that yet, or no?
Personally, I haven't encountered an individual who was venting or complaining of their frustrations. But I mean, you know, social media is alive with people that are clearly stating their frustrations, understandably so. Equally, there's as many that are providing encouraging messages. But it is not unusual. It's human nature for people at this point in this event to feel a number of emotions, frustration being one of them.
Now, I know you answered this before, but I'm going to ask you again. Because Brian McDonald, he is the only member of the legislature who has served in the military before. And he was discussing this again about why the military wasn't called in to help sandbag before. And the way he described it was that, yes, EMO is following the policy of the province, which is you don't use the military until you've exhausted your resources. But he feels that the leaders, such as Brian Gallant, should have overruled that policy temporarily to help with things like sandbagging, since the military here knows how to sandbag. Any thoughts on that?
I have a number of thoughts on that. First of all, the statement about it's a provincial policy not to call in the military until as a last resort, that's not a provincial policy. That's national policy. That's defense policy. And the Canadian Armed Forces is but one federal department with resources. Now, whether or not Mr. MacDonald wants to accept this explanation, I'll provide it. In the world of problem solving, and the military is very good at that, you do an assessment of the situation and you determine the resources you need. And that's my job, to do that and to provide advice to decision makers if I need more. It's called doing an estimate of the situation. And part of the operational planning process is knowing, yes, the intent, what you want to achieve, but as well, you have to assess what is the real requirement. And in this instance, the assessment of the situation was that the operational imperatives were life and safety, and therefore enabling evacuation, and therefore boats. And those were achieved, and we didn't have to ask the military for them. We asked other departments, other federal departments, to assist us and augment the boating capability we have in the province. The other operational imperatives, of course, were caring for these folks once evacuated. And that was done by bringing in the Red Cross and mobilizing other resources to do that. Now, we can Monday morning quarterback all we want and say, you know, you can fill hundreds of thousands of sandbags, but you have to know where you need them and where to put them. And even military resources are finite. And it is an unrealistic ask, and therefore an unrealistic task, to turn to the military and say, fill a couple of 100,000 sandbags, on speculation go to the following communities in case there's impacts there. Because you might be wrong. And it is better to do the life safety tasks that are apparent to you than it is to try and speculate and guesstimate where you might need things. And I want to talk about community resilience here. The knee-jerk reaction to ask for the military or anybody else to come in large numbers and do your work for you tells me that people underestimate the resilience of their own citizens. And you would have noticed, and I have talked about this, that the communities that were impacted by this, in large part, their own citizens self-mobilized and did what needed to be done. And they helped with sandbagging. They helped with a whole host of other things. They didn't need a soldier to do it while they watched. And that's important to bear in mind, because doctrinally, and certainly societally, we want people, we want communities to build resiliency, to understand what their capacity is, and to mobilize that. That's what's important. We will not always have or want someone to ride to the rescue while we passively sit back and watch them rescue us. I don't think that's the Canadian way, and that was never the intent. I hope that adequately addresses the question.
Thank you, Greg. Merci. We are okay for today. No more questions? Thank you so much. Merci. Thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.